Well, at DMEXCO, I'm on a panel that talks about the convergence of data activation and creativity, and this is definitely at the crux of what we do at Xaxis in conjunction with artificial intelligence and machine learning. We believe the future is about the activation of data, of smart data, as opposed to big data. What data points you need to activate to inform creative, and then machines can take over and do some of the work, not all of the work. So there's this discussion about, will machines take over for people in the end with this, what appears to be a collision between data and creativity. And what we believe is you actually need both to be successful in time, and that's how we are arranging at Xaxis, and it's what we're going to be speaking about at DMEXCO this year.
So explain a little bit about what machine learning means and automation. We've heard so much about automation, the last few years, and it seems that things are widely automated, but yet there's another step in terms of what you describe as artificial intelligence or machine learning. So what does that new world look like, and what's the path to that?
Well, ironically, the idea of machine learning and artificial intelligence is actually driven by human beings, and that is really what has given rise to the data science field, which is exponentially more important in our industry and many industries. And the irony is we talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence, but it's really data scientists capturing data and informing machines that leads to the artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we've staffed up at Xaxis, as have many other companies, with data scientists to actually look at the immense amount of data that we hold at Xaxis, determine what pieces of data are relevant for specific clients, specific campaign goals, which can actually vary for the same client depending on what they're looking to achieve. Upper funnel, lower funnel, for example, would be two very different data sets that they can leverage, and feed that through Turbine, obviously, which is our data activation platform, into Copilot, which is our machine learning algorithm, which feeds into the DSP. So we've essentially, at Xaxis, taken over decisioning for our own campaigns to ensure that we're making the right informed decisions based on our data on behalf of our clients.
Cool. And how does the company grow in terms of particularly human resource and hiring and people? And I know you've been growing quickly, and the whole sort of, I guess let me just sort of restate that by saying, you guys have you've never been a traditional ad agency or media buying agency by any means, but how does Xaxis grow in terms of staffing and moving into this sort of machine learning world, in terms of hiring, in terms of organizational structure? How is it developed?
Well, we call ourselves the world's largest audience company, programmatic audience company specifically, and we really are becoming as much a tech company as a business-facing company, through things like Turbine being the largest data activation platform that we know of, as far as that sits in an agency certainly, and with the advent of Copilot this year, which is the machine learning component of our stack. We also have teams that actually develop technology in native advertising under Plista, and in performance advertising specifically under Light Reaction. So we are certainly a technology-driven organization that powers the audiences that we target online. So you would assume, obviously, that in that construct, how we hire from a personnel perspective varies across all the disciplines that you might imagine. We have an amazingly savvy technology development team. We hired our first global CTO at Xaxis specifically earlier this year. We have an amazingly talented, very senior product team here, and a growing amount of data science. So we have over 250 people just in what you'd consider historically the product and engineering organization at Xaxis, which is certainly not typical, let's say, for an agency holding company, but it shows the importance of proprietary developed technology in driving insights that you can't get from licensed platforms. There's an intelligence layer that you get by holding some of that proprietary tech, not 100% necessarily. We certainly use licensed platforms like everybody else, but there's a level of insight that we bring to the table that differentiates us from the rest of the world.
Nicolle, what are some of your thoughts about career paths, encouraging people, mentoring people, opportunities to enter this sort of automated world of media that's being developed, young people, also perhaps encouraging more women to be involved? Like, what are some of the thoughts that you would like to share with people who are interested in this field?
Yeah, well, I think obviously it's a growing field and growing in importance across the industry of programmatic in general, right? I think it's a great field to be in. It's, you know, I grew up in digital very much so, and was fortunate enough to sort of live through an amazing evolution in a fairly short period of time, as I know, you know, many folks in the industry have. We've sort of all grown up together. So I think it's a fantastic field to grow in. The other thing that I really like about this industry is that people can move to different types of roles. So in my case, for example, I moved from what started as a business development type of role into a sales role, into a product role, and then in more recent years into more operationally driven roles. So that is a trajectory that some other types of industries don't afford individuals. If you have sort of a natural inclination to learn different components of an industry, this is a great one to be in. You know, with regard to women specifically, you know, certainly, you know, women are under-indexed in this industry, as they are in many industries. And, you know, I've said it once, I've said it before, I think there are many capable women in this industry, and certainly who are exploring this industry. And so there's more and more of us in the industry, there's more and more of us staying in the industry, and certainly more of us, you know, moving into more senior roles. So like in any industry, my hope is that the most competent individuals for a particular position get those roles, and that we, you know, change the dynamics over time. And I do think it will take some time, fortunately or unfortunately, but I think it's happening, and hopefully it will continue to happen, certainly with some of the more corporate initiatives that are taking place, specifically within, you know, the ad tech industry and within the agency holding companies themselves.
And finally, Nicolle, looking at the industry as it's developed and where it is, and the big walled gardens, the big Facebook, the big Google, you know, what you guys are building with Turbine and AOL and other players, how do you see the ecosystem of ad tech, the state of it and where it's going over the next couple of years, and what are some of those conversations you think that'll happen at DMEXCO?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, the walled garden discussion is one that is continuing. You know, it's certainly not new by any stretch. What I will say about the walled gardens is that, you know, from a Xaxis perspective, we're actually working more with across the walled gardens more than we were in previous years, and that's because there's actually a collaboration happening in more recent times that wasn't necessarily happening a few years ago. So despite being walled gardens, we actually, you know, we talk about sort of breaking down the walls of the walled gardens and seeing across them at Xaxis, and we are able to do that now, which we weren't just, you know, a couple of years ago. So I think that's evolving. There certainly are walled gardens, but I do think that there are sort of neutral parties that look across to ensure, you know, performance for clients, and that's certainly what, you know, we at Xaxis do, because we're not a media owner as such. So, you know, I think that will continue. I think a big conversation at DMEXCO is going to be this discussion around not just walled gardens, but also, you know, this what is perceived to be a collision between the data folks, the creative folks, and now this discussion around artificial intelligence, machine learning has really heated up, particularly over the last 12 months or so, which is even like another component that we weren't necessarily talking about as much just a few years ago. And so this is sort of the perfect trifecta, right? How are these pieces going to start fitting together to create a sort of a new digital age? And that's really what it's going to be. You know, when we find the equilibrium between these three pieces that we're talking about, I think that will drive, you know, let's say, you know, digital advertising 3.0, because it's a new component that we're talking about that we weren't talking about you know, just in the last couple of years.